Hello, everyone, and welcome to the You Belong workshop on LGBTQIA inclusion. My name is Helen, my pronouns are she, her, and I developed this workshop to train both staff and students on how to be inclusive allies on a college campus. This workshop is applicable to anyone in high school and up who wants to be a better ally and deepen their understanding of gender and sexuality. Today's workshop is about building spaces where every person feels seen, respected, and supported, especially queer community members. It's about opening up possibilities for how we show up for others and ourselves. By the end of our time together, the goal is to make you feel more comfortable and capable in advocating for LGBTQIA inclusion. This might look like speaking up in a meeting, supporting a student who's exploring their identity, or simply creating a safer, more welcoming atmosphere in your own corner of your community. Quick group agreement before we dive in: respect and empathy. Approach all discussions with an open mind, respect differing perspectives, and seek to understand rather than to judge. This topic requires extra sensitivity and kindness. This is a safe space for learning and mistakes. Practice using affirming and inclusive terminology. Mistakes are part of learning. Acknowledge them with grace and move on. And reserve the right to change your mind. If you say or think something and then later disagree with yourself, that's okay. This is a safe space to say something and then later feel differently and change your mind. We are here for prevention education to support our community. By the end of this workshop, I want to give you the tools to translate this message into action. I'm here for you. Your health impacts my health. Let's do this together. LGBTQIA individuals experience disproportionately high rates of health inequities driven by the chronic stress of societal stigma and discrimination, homophobia, and transphobia. These cause mental health challenges, addiction, and suicide with barriers to access care. Through strategic framework and approaches for inclusion, we can change the narrative. Language matters. Language is a crucial way that people know they are safe. The most affirming thing you can do is know and utilize language, pronouns, and correct names. Language is constantly evolving, and keeping up with it is essential to creating an affirming environment. Sexuality. It's not a bad or dirty word. It is the core of our humanity. None of us would be here without it. It is an essential, lifelong, from birth to death, aspect of being human. We have our sexuality when we're born. A healthy culture celebrates sexuality with respect, openness, and mutuality. The difference between sex and gender identity. Sex is a label assigned at birth: male, female, or intersex, based on the appearance of a baby's genitals or medical tests of their chromosomes, hormones, and internal organ. This is our sex assigned at birth. Gender identity is a person's inner understanding of their own gender. Examples include being cisgender or transgender, woman, man, non-binary, gender fluid, or agender. And we will define what each of these mean. This is kind of an oversimplified explanation, although I do find it helpful. These are key components that make up our sexuality, make up who we are as human. So we can start first at the genital area. That is our sex: male, female, or intersex. Then we have attraction, who you are attracted to. If you think back to your earliest crush and just how embarrassing and overwhelming it felt, that's because we don't really have any control over who we are attracted to. You might be attracted to men, women, both, neither, or anywhere in between. All of these exist on a spectrum, and they aren't mutually exclusive. Then we have our identity, our gender identity, the gender that we know we are. You might identify as a man, you might identify as a woman, you might identify as both, as neither, and anywhere in between. And our expression, so how we express ourselves on the outside. Some people like clothes that are considered feminine, some people like clothes that are considered masculine, and some people like to mix and match. Neither, anywhere in between. And if you think about how important our expression is, I'm sure all of us have had the experience of wearing something that just doesn't feel true to our identity. Maybe we had to wear a uniform for school or for work, or just get dressed up in something that really did not feel right. It makes the world of a difference about how you feel on the inside based on how you're expressing on the outside. The more true we are to our expression, the better we feel. However, then the question begs, are we safe in society when we express ourselves how we actually want to? Some people are, some people aren't. Gender is characteristics that are socially constructed, norms, behaviors, and roles associated with gender. Gender is hierarchical and produces inequalities that intersect with other inequalities, politically, economically, and socially. So politically, in the United States, where I am right now, have we ever had a woman president? Have we ever had a trans president? No. All of our presidents have been men. Economically, does a gender wage gap exist? Yes, it does. And socially, how are different genders treated socially in society? What are the statistics on sexual violence, street harassment, gender-based violence? And your gender identity intersects with ethnicity, socioeconomic status, ability, age, location, and sexual orientation. So all of these things place you in a social hierarchy that determine the rights you have, the amount of money you're able to make, and your sense of social safety. Gender also influences access to health care. Rigid gender norms negatively affect people with diverse gender identities who face violence, stigma, and discrimination. To understand this hierarchy better, we can look at Kimberly Crenshaw's concept of intersectionality. Intersectionality explains that individuals experience oppression differently based on where they stand across different social markers. Intersectionality is a lens through which you can see where power comes and collides, where it locks and intersects. It is the acknowledgement that everyone has their own unique experience of discrimination and privilege. And a quote by Audre Lorde, "There is no such thing as a single issue struggle because we do not live single issue lives." So while this presentation is about gender and sexuality, it is important to keep in mind that this is only one piece of the social puzzle. American culture is rooted in purity culture. That has been the dominant culture since Puritan colonial settlers landed here in the 1600s. It puts a strong emphasis on suppressing sexuality, and shame is the cultural tool for control over sexuality. Pride is the opposite of shame. The cultural script on gender. We get messages on who we are supposed to be. We are supposed to fit into two distinct categories, male or female, on the gender binary. We're supposed to fall in love with someone of the opposite sex, date for a while, get married, have intercourse on our honeymoon to procreate. When we don't follow the script, shaming happens. That's when you start to hear terms like childless cat lady, alphabet people, sissy, spinster, the term like a girl. I mean, how offensive to girls, to children, and deviant. There was a campaign years ago like a girl, which I found inspiring. Girls using their voices to show what it really means to do things like a girl. But it's sad that we even need a campaign like that. Would you ever see a campaign that says, like a boy? No, because that is the default, that is the standard, that is considered good, higher, and girls are second. Saying something like a girl is an insult. Here are some examples about other ways that our society is just obsessed with gendering even inanimate objects. Serious tools for girls. No, I think a tape measure is just a tape measure. Girl boss versus the boss. You would never hear someone call a man a boy boss. Yet highly accomplished, powerful women are called girl bosses. It's reducing. A lot of sexist comments tend to come out when someone is expecting a baby. The idea of a gender reveal. Is that really accurate? The accurate term would be a sex reveal. You might know the sex of the baby before they're born, but you don't know their gender identity until they are able to tell you what it is. If we look at this mug, comments like, it's a girl in pink, it's a future president in blue, it's going to be a beautiful baby in pink, it's a boy in blue, it's a little angel in pink, your guess is as good as mine in blue. That kind of reflects that boys will be boys attitude. Dish soap marketed to men. Why is that? Well, is the default dish soap for women? Children's toys, tough guy, little princess, and other terms, independent woman. I get called an independent woman all the time, and I am an independent woman. I'm proud to be, but you would never say independent man. So the assumption is that you didn't think I was going to be independent, or it's notable enough that I've overcome certain barriers that exist in society that I get to be an independent woman. Career woman, you would never hear career man. Female CEO, you never hear male CEO. Family man, but you never hear family woman because it's expected. And the term metrosexual. When men dress nicely, they're called metrosexual. Anyone can dress nicely. What does that say about our expectations around someone's capability in being able to dress themselves? These cultural ideas are reflected in the discrimination that is perpetuated by our laws and our government. This creates systemic discrimination, like barriers to accurate IDs, free speech and expression bans, like drag and book bans, healthcare restrictions, barriers that exist that prevent people from getting the healthcare they need, whether they are in prison or based on what age they are, or funding restrictions. Gender affirming care is very expensive. Bathroom bans, student and educator rights, like rigid curriculums that perpetuate this gender binary, forced outings in school, bathroom and sports bans. In 2024, the ACLU tracked 533 anti-LGBTQ bills in the U.S. Recently, gender affirming care for children has been largely restricted and shut down. The U.S. Army bars transgender people from enlisting and ends gender affirming care services. The CDC removal of databases on sexual orientation and gender identity. Federal workers ordered to remove gender identity from email signatures. All of these things happening at the government level down to the cultural level where we shame each other and push each other into rigid boxes that do not reflect everyone's truth has a large impact on mental health. This perpetuates the health and mental health crisis impacting queer people. In 2023, the U.S. National Survey on the mental health of LGBTQ young people found that 40% of LGBTQ youth have seriously considered suicide in the past year. 40% of a youth population seriously considering suicide is unacceptable and very dangerous. And in 2023, the CDC reported that 26% of transgender students attempted suicide in the past year. This was in 2023. So as we continue to collect data, as the legal restrictions become more rigid, these numbers steadily increase. Youth die because of these systemic and cultural ideas around gender. And all of this does not just impact queer folks. The gender binary impacts all of us. So think about ways that people are punished for behaving in gender nonconforming ways. These create limiting beliefs you hold about yourself, gender-based discrimination, feelings you suppressed. Often this happens in childhood when someone wants to play with a particular toy. No, that toy's for boys. That toy's for girls. It's just a toy, and you're just a kid. It's weird to assign gender to an inanimate object. Also, colors. The idea that pink is for girls, blue is for boys. It's literally a color. Yet people can experience violence or even death for expressing themselves in certain ways. What assumptions have you held about how you are supposed to express your gender to the world? How you dress and behave, competition and collaboration, relationships to your feelings, interests, careers. No, I don't understand why a man will be teased if he orders a fruity drink. It's fruit. It's a plant. It's a drink. The idea that men can't cry, yet we have to consider the mental health impact that has. The same way that we have to consider the mental health impact on queer folks. There is also an epidemic of straight cis males who die by suicide at disproportionate rates. This has to do with the fact that they are not allowed to express their feelings due to their gender identity. There is a stigma around asking for help. And when we put people into these boxes, it hurts everyone. That's just no way to live. What makes you feel lit up and authentic in the way you identify and express your gender? What do you feel the best when you're wearing, when you're doing? What makes you feel off and not like yourself in the way that you identify and express your gender? Are you expected to wear certain things or do things you don't want to do, or not get to do things that you want to do because of your gender? What aspects of gender expression are you curious about exploring for yourself? How you dress and behave, your values, your roles, your relationship to your feelings. These questions are from the incredible book Gender Magic by Ray McDaniel. Highly recommend this book. Terms and definitions. Cisgender is if someone has the same gender identity as the sex the doctor assigned them at birth, like a man who was assigned male at birth or a woman who was assigned female at birth. Homophobia is an aversion to lesbian, gay, or bisexual people and non-heterosexual cultures. Transphobia is a system of negative attitudes towards transgender, non-binary, and other gender-expansive people. Examples include explicit examples like slurs, name-calling, hate crimes, violence, harassment, and abuse. Implicit examples include policies that negatively impact gay, lesbian, and bisexual people, barriers to accessing healthcare, cultural values, and hierarchical cultures. Heterosexism, also called heteronormativity, is the assumption in individuals and or institutions that everyone is heterosexual and that heterosexuality is superior to all other sexualities. It leads to invisibility and stigmatizing of other sexualities. For example, when learning a woman is married, asking her what her husband's name is. Might not be a husband. Assuming that masculine men and feminine women are straight. So when you hear that, oh, you don't look gay, remember your expression is different than who you are attracted to. Cis-normativity is the assumption that all or most people identify with the gender assigned to them at birth. It is harmful to people with transgender or gender expansive identities, as well as to cisgender people who are often forced to adhere to rigid social expectations with regard to expression and activity. For example, when we use he or she pronouns for someone who uses they, them, and assuming you know someone's pronouns based off of how they look. Examples of cisgender privilege. I can use public restrooms without the fear of verbal abuse, physical intimidation, or arrest. Strangers call me by the name I provide and don't ask what my real name is and then assume they have the right to call me by that name. I can reasonably assume that my ability to acquire a job, rent an apartment, or secure a loan won't be denied based on my gender identity or expression. I have the ability to walk through the world and generally blend in, not being constantly stared or gawked at, whispered about, pointed at, or laughed at because of my gender expression. I don't fear interactions with police officers due to my gender identity. Strangers don't assume they can ask me what my genitals look like and how I have sex. I can travel or show ID in restaurants or bars without fear I'll be rejected. More examples: celebrating your marriage or relationship with your family, friends, coworkers, and religious community. Paid leave from your job when grieving the death of your partner. Inheriting from your partner automatically after their death. Having multiple positive role models from the same identity. Sharing health insurance with your partner. Being able to see your partner immediately if in an accident or emergency. Being able to be promoted in your job without your sexuality playing a factor. Adopting your children, being a foster parent, and obtaining child custody. Filing joint tax returns. Receiving discounted homeowner insurance rates with your recognized partners, raising children without worrying about state intervention, being employed as a preschool or elementary teacher without people assuming you will corrupt the children, dating the person you desired in your teens, living openly and being accepted by your neighbors, colleagues, and new friends, being able to go to a doctor and getting treatment that doesn't conflict with your identity, being able to access social services without fear of discrimination or being turned away, and supporting your partner for citizenship. The acronym LGBTQIA+ stands for lesbian, gay, bi, trans, queer, questioning, intersex, and asexual. The plus refers to the expanding community, including but not limited to pansexual, agender, demisexual, two-spirit, which is exclusively for Indigenous people and should not be used by people outside of that community, non-binary, gender fluid, and gender non-conforming. Here is an image that shows the significance of the colors of the flag, and this is the most up-to-date version of the Progress Pride flag, which continues to change as the community becomes more inclusive. Lesbians are women who are attracted to other women. Some lesbians prefer being called gay, since gay can be an umbrella term for anyone attracted to the same sex. This is a fun fact. Why is L the first letter in the acronym? In the early days of the gay rights movement, the lesbian community was often dismissed and rejected, leading to division within the community. During the AIDS crisis, thousands of men were disowned by their families. The lesbian community came together to care for these men, and as a gesture of gratitude for their support, the acronym was set in stone as LGB. So, like I said, gender is hierarchical. So, even within the LGBTQ plus community, a hierarchy still exists. Bringing L to the front of the acronym was a symbolic gesture to promote a level of equity. A hierarchy does still exist in the community today, with men being at the top, then women, then transgender folks at the bottom. Gay can be used as an umbrella term to refer to anyone who is attracted to a person of the same gender. Gay frequently refers to men who are attracted to other men. The gay community first embraced this term in the late 60s. Before this, gay was a slur used to harm and degrade men in the community. The term homosexual is no longer widely used. Bisexual people are attracted to more than one sex or gender. Bisexuality can sometimes be misjudged as a pit stop on the way to being gay, but it isn't. While sexual identities can and do change over time, bisexuality is its own identity, not just a path to coming out as gay. No matter what it looks like for you, your bisexuality is valid. So, lesbian, gay, and bisexual all refer to sexual orientation. That's the attraction part of our sexuality. Cisgender and transgender refer to gender identities. So, transgender is when someone's identity is different from their sex assigned at birth. Cisgender is when someone's identity is the same from their sex assigned at birth. Transgender people use different terms to describe themselves. Non-binary is when someone's gender doesn't fit under the label of either man or woman. Non-binary people can be both a man and woman, in between, or completely outside of those categories. Gender fluid, someone whose gender changes over time. Agender, someone who may not identify with any gender. Trans or transgender is also its own gender identity. Some folks identify as a trans man or just a man, trans woman or just a woman. Remember, your gender identity is who you know you are. So you may be trans, meaning your gender identity doesn't match the sex assigned at birth. And every individual is different. Some people like the label trans man. Some people know, no, I'm just a man. That is my gender identity. Queer is an umbrella term that can refer to just about anyone in the community. Being queer isn't about your gender or sexual orientation, it's about both. Queerness is about operating outside of the norm. Queer is another reclaimed word. The Q can also refer to questioning. This means someone who is still exploring their gender or sexual identity. You're still part of the community, even if you aren't sure what to define yourself as just yet. Intersex individuals are born with both male and female chromosomes and sex characteristics. Intersex individuals are not trans, but their identities are often erased and shamed, much like other members of the LGBTQIA plus community. Not all intersex people identify with being LGBTQIA plus. I highly recommend learning more from the intersex activist Pigeon Pagonis. Asexual, also called ace, asexual people don't feel sexual attraction at all. Asexual people can still feel romantic attraction, which means they might date, have long-term partners, or even get married. Asexuality is on a spectrum, like all gender or sexual identities. There is no right way to be ace. Asexuality is about your relationship to sex and sexuality. It can be fluid, static, just like any other sexual experience. Pansexual means you're attracted to all people regardless of gender. Demisexual is someone who only feels sexual attraction to someone after developing a strong emotional bond with them. Two-spirit is a term used by Indigenous people to describe a gender or sexual orientation that isn't defined by the gender binary. It's an umbrella term that acknowledges the diversity of gender expression, sexuality, and gender roles within Indigenous communities. It shouldn't be used by people who aren't Indigenous. Two-spirit people are considered to occupy a distinct gender status rather than being considered men or women. Many cultures have recognized two-spirit people for centuries. These are outdated terms that should never be used. Tranny, hermaphrodite, transvestite, transgendered, transgendering, transgenders, it, she-male, he-she, the surgery, pre-op or post-op, female to male or male to female. These terms specifically are things that are okay if someone identifies as that themselves, but as allies, we should never assume that someone's okay being called that. Some folks identify as this, but many find it offensive. Fooling or deceiving, saying real, then inserting sex pronouns or names, sex change, or cross-dressing. Cross-dressing is another term that some people may find affirming if they use it themselves, but we should never assume that someone is okay with that. People are dressing, they're expressing themselves. Misgendering is referring to someone using a form of a dress that does not reflect their gender identity. Dead naming is referring to someone by their birth name when they have changed their name as a part of their gender transition. Passing is being perceived as cisgender and or heterosexual. This can be an affirming experience for some and a stressful experience for others. Passing should never be an expectation. It can be seen as a choice to be respected, or it can be felt as a pressure to conform. Coming out is the process when an LGBTQIA+ person shares their sexual orientation and or gender identity with themselves and others. Coming out is not a requirement of being LGBTQ+ in any way, and it is a deeply personal experience. It is usually a lifelong process, not a one-time event. Coming out can bring people closer, but it can also be risky and dangerous. Coming out is an expectation of living in a heterosexist society. When someone comes out to you, know that this is a huge sign of trust. Check in on confidentiality. So who already knows? Who can I share with? Do you want me to keep this private? Remember that their gender and sexuality is just one dimension of them. Show interest and curiosity about this part of them. Ask how you can be the best support to them. Thank them for trusting and telling you. Things you should not do: say, "I always knew," or downplay the significance. Don't tell everyone or brag about your new trans friend or your new gay friend. Don't ask probing questions or cross personal barriers you wouldn't have crossed before. Don't forget they're still the same person, and don't assume you know why they came out to you. When asking questions, it's important to consider these things. What is the purpose of this question? Am I asking this person to educate me? Would I ask a cis or straight person the same question? And what assumptions am I making? An ally is typically a straight or cis person who supports and respects members of the LGBTQ community. Allies take action in support and respect. I really like this quote by Stan Miller. If you claim to be someone's ally but aren't getting hit by the same stones thrown at them, you're not standing close enough. Steps you can take and changes you can make. Practice using gender-neutral language. For pronouns, instead of assuming he or she, use they until you know for sure. We already typically do this. If we don't know someone's pronouns, we refer to them as them, just like I did just now. Greetings, instead of boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, or guys, use folks, friends, everybody, y'all, class, or distinguished guest instead of ladies and gentlemen. I really like that one. Family terms. So for mom or dad, you could use parent or caregiver. For brother or sister, sibling. For wife or husband, partner or spouse. For grandma or grandpa, grandparent. And the gender neutral term for aunt and uncle is pibling. Professional titles, anything that ends with man or woman, so chairman, chairwoman, steward or stewardess, fireman, firewoman, policeman, policewoman, etc. You could use chair or chairperson, flight attendant, firefighter, police officer. And for pregnant woman, you can use pregnant person. One of the great ways to avoid making a mistake is to start with you. So when you introduce yourself, use your name and pronouns and ask for their name and pronouns. If you're a teacher, you can ask students if they have a name they would prefer to be called that is different by their legal name. Add your pronouns to your electronic signature on emails, business cards, name tags, resumes, Zoom, and anywhere you have your name. If you're ever creating a form, leave space for diverse options. You could have legal name and preferred name if different from legal name. Ask for pronouns, but not preferred pronouns. They're just your pronouns. For gender identity, instead of just having a box that's male and female, you could make it open-ended, so just leave a blank. You could also have multiple choice, so select all that apply, and you can include woman, man, non-binary, two-spirit, gender fluid, gender queer, agender, transgender, intersex, prefer not to say, and other with a space to fill in. Most importantly, be a role model. So practice, practice, practice. Practice when the person isn't around. Get your eyes used to seeing their new name or pronouns. Practice gender neutral writing and speaking. Practice accountability. Ask others to correct you. Advocate for gender inclusive facilities. Attend gender inclusion trainings, stay up to date on best practices and evolving language, diversify your content, seek out social media accounts, TV shows, documentaries, books that have diverse gender representation and challenge rigid roles around gender and sexual orientation, avoid gendered assumptions. Make gender inclusive practices clear. For example, I facilitate support groups, and one of our group rules is to please respect group members' pronouns and gender identity, and be open to feedback. If someone points out a non-inclusive practice, listen with compassion and understanding, don't get defensive, and adapt. When you make a mistake, correct yourself and apologize without making it about yourself and move on. If you find yourself making the same mistake a lot, let the person know, I'm sorry, I'm struggling so much with this. Please know I really respect you and know this is important. I'm going to keep working on it and getting better. In conclusion, with a quote from Audre Lorde, it is not our differences that divide us. It is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences. Thank you so much for taking the time to have this really important conversation with me today.